Welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna be looking deeper into the Planetary, because last time we just explored the basics of it, saw what we could do, what we couldn't do, and how it affects stuff. Because the main takeaway we got from last time was that every time we stack planetaries like this, it exponentially increases the output. You have to limit yourself with planetary uses. Don't go crazy with the planetary stacks. The one proper application for a planetary stack is for Mach 1 cars. So let me show you my original Mach 1, and we can see how this is properly utilized. And here it is, a small little version of a Mach 1 car. It says that because again it's dependent on the circumference of the tire that you're running and the RPM of the motor. We only needed that 1234-36, and this always delivers a 1306 in this setup. This is obviously a single gear setup, and the Planetaries is stretching it to a 19.01 ratio. So it's super tall, and as we said, our stop speed and our acceleration is inversely proportionate. So the bigger that gets, the smaller that gets. This is the only proper utilization for something like this, in my opinion. So we're gonna have to again modify how we implement planetaries in our gearbox to make them useful. Let's look at what we can take from this build and implement into our next. I've taken a step down out because we just want to look at this, and we're going to be looking at the ratios now to see what we can take. So here we got the 1 to 5, that's normal ratio. Here the 3 into the 1 to 5, that's a 2875. That's still a nice useful ratio, and about what we probably looking for top end. So definitely those two are keepers. Here we're having that problem because we're getting that exponential step up. So it's at 2-3 squared times the 1 to 5. That blows up already to a 66125. So that's completely useless. So that's getting chopped out. So that we can take. Let's see what that 2875 gives us on the top end. Look at that, like 290 on the top end of that 2875. So that's awesome. And that first one is 125. So here we can see immediately, if we lift those two, that front piece of that planetary stack, and we feed it with a 2-speeder, we can obviously immediately split it into 4-speed and modify how we do this. That's awesome. We want to keep that top end. That's a little bit much, so we want to slow down the first gear. So that means we want to probably throw a 2-shifter with 0.8 and 1 into this mix. That will give us a shorter first and a second and third in between, and a 290 top. Let's build it and see. Here we can see what it looks like when we take that shortened planetary stack and feed it that 0.8 and the 1 into it. Because it's 0.8 and 1, it's not that much difference between the two when splitting it. So let's stretch this out and change this up to that 0.8 and a 125, just to switch this up a bit. So we'll retain this bottom part of the curve, which is like 90, and then we'll retain this third gear, which is what, 210, and we'll stretch this second and fourth out a bit. Let's build it and see where we're at. Here we can see the outcome of those changes. It looks way better, like really nice. These things are long, it shifts the weight lots way forward with the motors, and adding more power to make this better, to easier to get there, is gonna tax us on that center of mass, because this is gonna be pretty undrivable. You don't want to go too wide, because again, wider cars, narrower spaces, you won't fit so well, you're gonna struggle. So we're gonna have to again modify our gearbox to make it work. So how's about this? We split the box right down the middle, because that section works independently from that section, so it's totally possible to split this box. Let's look at what we have. We got three pieces here: the power train, that first part of the gearbox, and the second part of the gearbox, because you can see that as a clear split between the two sections. So technically that axle connecting these two halves of the gearbox can be as long as we want it to be. Get this weight more forward. What we're going to do is another little secret trick in the gearboxing world. We're going to build what's called a split box. Split this box in half and stick the motor in the middle. So this taps out that side, feeding into that on this side, axle over the motor at the top, feeding into that on this side, and then that one tapping off the bottom beneath it, feeding into our axle. But we can improve that even more, because now look here, we just need that and that as our input output sections, and this, as long as it keeps the paths for the ratios correct, we can change this up. So let's do that even more. What if we went with this planetary stack coming out of the motor, feeding into this, hanging over it, making this ratios still exactly the same with the motor here, output there, but to incorporate the split box design, we're flipping this 180. So it's sitting here feeding this way. This back part of it will sit over here somewhere, because the motor's going to sit here, that's going to sit over the motor, basically like here, like this, but over here, hanging over this, while this is feeding from the motor, making this work exactly the same, but changing this output to an input, and vice versa on this side. So if we can do that this side, we can do the exact same here this side. Basically, as we have it here, we just rotate this anti-clockwise 180. So basically we're looking at this upside down, and this shifter actuation will be on top with the fixed shaft at the bottom leading to the axle. That's pretty tight and compact. Here we have that split box design I was talking about. The power going into that planetary stack, feeding the two shifter hanging over top, feeding directly into the one in the back, going to the axle. Now this is 11 blocks long, 5 blocks wide, and 4 blocks tall. That's pretty compact, but it also means that this, the 6th row, is our midpoint, and we can clearly see here that the motor is in front of it. But because of the space, we have two choices here. One, we can just shift the motors back one or two, preferably one, so that the weight sits mid and just behind it, or the beefier option, just stick two more motors in here, double the power, more acceleration, and it will naturally shift that point, the center of mass, to just behind the block, the mid block of the setup. So I think, since we're always chasing bigger numbers, we're going to go with two more motors. And here's the complete solution. Split box, 4-banger, Subaru style, clean, neat, small, giving us everything we want. Only one problem: there's no way to connect the motors to the chassis. So, two options. One, drop the front or drop the extra 2 cylinders. We don't want to do that. We want more, always more. Two, either move this in the back 1 block to give us space to connect there, or this setup in the front 1 block forward to give us that 1 block to connect here. So that comes down to center of mass. Where's the center of mass? This block here, that's is our center block out of the 11 from front to back. So, and the motor is where the most of the weight is, so it's on that center line. So that's about where we expect the center of mass to sit, right there, just behind that, yeah, just behind that center block. And indeed, there it is, just behind the center block. So to give us that gap to connect the motors, I'm thinking, because this is the modal block and our weight is just behind it, we move the center section of the gearbox forward one and connect in the front. Everything looks amazing, because this time it is. This is a proper, or this is where you start getting into proper S plus class chassis. Now I haven't spoken about the class system yet, and we can't see it up top there because it's a lot janky. It's just not, it's hard to pinpoint a way to get into a class. There's a lot of variables working into it, like all of these. But anyway, point is, you want to go for records, this is the kind of platform you start off with. But because of that and this high performance, we're running into that issue again of we need downforce. It's so hard to keep this thing on the track, because when you're racing and you see your tires vibrating up and down, that's the car trying and searching for traction because it's not getting it. It's too much. You're overloading the tires. And this basically constantly happens with this thing, because there's no downforce sticking the tires onto the road, giving us that grip. So yeah, it's drivable, but not raceable, not really. Instead of getting into the aero now, like I said, I'll cover it some other time. We're gonna do another little trick that's also gonna save us something else. You see how low this motor is? That's awesome. That center of mass on the height is incredibly beautiful. Lowest I think we've had so far. But the problem is, some places the motors will hit the ground, like especially when you start getting into downforce, it's gonna push this chassis down and lower, push those motors low to the ground. Go fast enough, it's gonna bottom out and you're gonna have not a nice day. So to sort out that problem and skip having to going for the downforce package, we gonna lift this motor gearbox combo up and plumb four-wheel drive down the bottom, turning this into all-wheel drive to compensate for that lack of grip. Because if we're powering all four wheels, one of them's gonna find traction. I've done quite a few all-wheel drive builds and it makes a difference. If you want traction, go four-wheel drive. Unfortunately, if you want top end times, you're gonna have to go rear-wheel drive. Here we see it as the all-wheel drive. Here we can see we lost a bit, understandable. Like, look at that. Look at the mass we gained, like more than 50 kgs just for that plumbing. Didn't look like much, added quite a bit. And that's why rear-wheel drive and record chasing go hand in hand. Here's the original line that came out on the axle, and we just use that 1:1 ratio again, because that gets us that one below the medium that our core is on. And then just straight axle to the front into that corner. That's your basic conversion kit for rear-wheel drive to all-wheel drive. Let's see if we can complete a race with this. torture is over. Yes, this thing is extremely fast and extremely capable. Without the downforce, it happily hits 100 as you go off the bridge. Even without the front wheel drive, it still does that 100 going off the bridge. You'll see in the video, even with the most bare bone basic aero package, this thing is extremely a handful to drive. Have fun with the split boxes, and see you next time.